Hello and good afternoon to everybody on a nice summer's day still in September, and welcome to the next installment of the standardization webinars, which the HS Booster project is setting up and organizing. And today's webinar is on the topic of the health sector. In a moment, I'll be handing over to the chair, which is Marita Kinsella, who's Head of Innovation Policy and Business Development at the National Standards Authority of Ireland. And she'll be introducing what is a very rich lineup of speakers that we have today, all focusing on standardization topics in the health sector. But before we go to that, I'd just like to give you a bit of background about the HS Booster project. We are a project which is funded by the European Commission under the Horizon Europe programme. And it's our role to kind of respond to the European Commission's Code of Practice on Standardisation by providing opportunities and raising awareness of standardisation to projects which are funded by the Commission. So projects funded either under Horizon 2020, Horizon Europe, and also Digital Europe program. So these could be projects which are ongoing and also projects which are finished. So the Booster is a free service, and we provide consultation services and also online tools and support to projects to basically improve their understanding of standardization, to meet standardization experts, and to really help them to develop standardization strategies and dive into and explore relevant standards to their work, which are relevant to their work. This can give a variety of positive impacts for any research project, can certainly lead to an increase of impact, and can really open up a lot of different doors. So the services we provide, the support we provide, includes, as I said, webinars like this to raise awareness, and also consultation where we match projects to standardization experts. So we actually recruit a pool of experts who are providing these services. And a project that applies, it's totally free to apply, and it's totally free to receive the services. And if you're a project which has the need to develop or you've written in your proposal that you want to contribute to standards, or it's something which has been recommended by the Commission, perhaps during the consultation period before your project starts, or during a review, then we can help you to do that by providing support on a number of different topics. So this could be an analysis of the landscape to understand which standards are relevant to your work. It could be to understand how to involve partners better who do have experience on standardization. And it can also be providing support in actually accessing standards or making purchases of standards. So we actually have budget set aside to support projects who are particularly interested in this and perhaps don't have the resources to manage this. So it's a very practical type of support that we provide for projects. I provided the link here on how a project can apply. And some simple steps. It's as I said, it's free support. You can apply online. It's very quick. We try to match you up with an appropriate standardization expert, and we have 150 experts from different standardization bodies, from different countries and from different backgrounds. And we have a range here, you can see on the right, a range of open call topics, one of which is health, and one of which is also digitalization, where of course you have a lot of interesting areas where health is expanding due to digital solutions. And you can go online and you can have a look at these different areas. These are all the open call topic areas are all related to standardization priorities outlined by the European Commission, or also by the European Standardization Organization. So we work very closely with them to make sure that everything is focused on meeting objectives. If you're an expert and you're interested, so if you work in standardization and you're interested in contributing to the Booster service, which is a pilot service we're running for the Commission, then please, you can also apply here. We pay our experts to liaise and to support projects. And this is a great way of getting visibility, both for your work and the activities which you're contributing to already. Meeting new people working in the area and wanting to contribute to standardization. I'd also like to highlight a very nice resource that we have, which has been created by our consortium, and in particular by the University of Belgrade, which is a training academy. This contains a lot of free material, online courses on a variety of areas, from the very beginning, understanding the opportunities that standardization has, and why it's a good idea for projects to get involved and to contribute, to practical issues on how you can actually do this, and a collection of case studies where projects have successfully contributed to standardization. So please do take a look at that. So with that, I'd like to hand over to Marita, and I think we have over 100, just under 100 people registered. We have a good number of projects who have registered as well. So with that, I'd like to hand over to Marita and the rest of the speakers for today's webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nick, and good afternoon, colleagues and friends. Delighted to have you here with us today and to welcome you to this webinar on standardization in the health sector. We've really good attendance, as Nick has said, this afternoon, registrants from across a large number of European countries, so welcome, colleagues. Delighted to have you at this webinar, but also we've a big welcome to a number of you who are joining us from outside the European Union as well. So we have participants from the USA, Saudi Arabia, Myanmar, Iraq and Colombia. So delighted to have such a good attendance. Over half of you have told us today that you're joining from organisations that are engaged in research, and some of you are involved in European research projects as well. And also many of the rest of you have told us that you're involved in standards development activities. So we hope that you find the session today very informative in showing you how standards can be utilised to enhance healthcare practice, to drive innovation and to continually improve patient care. So the objectives of our seminar today, firstly, we want to make sure that we emphasise the important role that standards can play, and actually that standards do play in the health sector. And we'll do this through showing the impact of standards in areas such as health informatics, artificial intelligence, risk management in health information systems, and of course driving towards the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Our second aim, of course, is to ensure that we give you a good understanding of the integration between research and standardization, and particularly for those of you who are involved in EU-funded research projects or thinking about getting involved in those projects, it's important that we can show you how standards and standards development can be harnessed for health research purposes, so that standards development and health research mutually benefit each other. So, as you know, we've a very busy schedule this afternoon and a very impressive lineup of eminent speakers who have significant expertise and experience in the role of standardization in healthcare and the health sector. We're really lucky to have them all today to share their insights with you on a wide array of different initiatives, activities, research projects that put standardization at the heart of healthcare. So just in order to keep us to time, our speakers are going to speak for about 8 minutes each. Our webinar is divided into 2 parts. We have Robert Circuit, Pamela Sebastos, Almudena and Robert who will speak in the first part. We'll aim to have a quick roundup for questions at about 4 p.m. And then in our second part, we'll have Silvana, Linda and Barry, and aim to have some questions then at the end of our session, just around 4:30. So without further ado, I just want to, before I move on, I just mentioned to you how to engage with us. You know, this is a really good opportunity to put questions to some of the leading experts in standardization in healthcare. So please do put your questions either into the chat or the Q&A. And if you have a question for a specific speaker, just make sure you mention their name so that we can direct the question to them. But let me move on now to introduce our first speaker this afternoon. So that's Robert Segui, and Robert is chair of SEN TC251 and Health Informatics. He is also a HL7 Netherlands board member. He's an independent consultant for ICT in health. And Robert is going to open up our session this afternoon with giving us an overview of standards in health and why it's important to use standards in the 21st century healthcare. So Robert, over to you.
Yes, thank you very much for this kind introduction and for inviting me to speak about what's close to my heart, standards in health. And of course, I will be giving an overview from the perspective of health informatics, because that's where I work in the SEN TC251 and in my consulting life as well. So what are standards in health? People tend to think about standards of care. So you can look at the gold standard for type 2 diabetes management. That's not the type of standard that we're talking about, but it is a cause of confusion sometimes, and sometimes professional, because the standards for care are from the professional societies. The professionals are afraid of standards because they think they will impact their work and their judgment as professional. That's not what standards in health are about. We are really about all other things than the clinical part. So we're looking at, for instance, the ISO 9000 series, the quality management systems in health. That's a big one. And we have separate standards that apply them specifically to health and tell you how ISO 9000 series standards should be applied in healthcare, because health has some peculiarities that need to be taken care of. In all, there's a very wide range of voluntary standards and standards supporting regulations. An example of the latter would be the medical device regulation, and there's quite a few standards that you need to take into account in order to qualify as a regulated medical device. But there's also voluntary standards. People are just saying, well, this is the standard that I want to adhere to, and they can be used in the single market. Especially in Europe, we're hoping to get a single market for services and for products. And so there's standards out there that you can take into account when issuing a tender for services or products. So that's more the area where SEN is working in. So I'll just quickly go to the role of SEN in general. SEN itself is really about standardization within the European community. So that's what we're looking at. We bring together the national standardization bodies from a whole lot of European countries, not just EU, but it is recognized by EU in legislation as one of the 3 European standardization organizations, together with the electrotechnical people in Senelec and the telecommunications people in ETSI. So those 3 are the recognized European standardization organizations that are responsible for European standards as referenced in EU legislation and policies. But we also have standards that are not referenced in EU legislation and policies. As I mentioned before, the voluntary standards are also part of our scope. I do provide some links on the slides. They will be shared, so you can click on those links to the European Standards webpage. And there's also a note on that webpage about ICT standardization, because ICT standardization tends to look at industry standards rather than formal standards. So that's something that we need to be careful about, and there's some special advice and regulations in the European standard system to take account of those. If I go to health informatics, our scope and mission is really about information engineering in health, and we collaborate closely with ISO TC215, which has the same scope. And we operate with the same rules. So a lot of our standards will be ISO standards. And we prefer to develop standards at the global level with ISO, together with ISO, and then say, well, this is also a European standard. Not all ISO standards will be European standards, but some of them are. As I mentioned before, especially in informatics and ICT standards, there are other people. So we're part of the Joint Initiative Council for Global Health Informatics Standardization, and we really want to make sure that for specific use cases, there's a harmonized set of standards across the different SDOs that actually respond to the business needs and help people implement their solutions in a coordinated way so that it can actually work. So we're not alone in health informatics. SEN Health Informatics DC251 is only one of the 12 or 13 current members. I can list you the areas of interest for each of these, but I suggest you go to the website and you can read up on what the individual SDOs, standard developing organizations, bring. In the interest of time, I'll just quickly go through with our portfolio. Our portfolio is 96 standards, some technical specifications. Those are kind of trial standards for trial use. They're not really ready yet to be a full standard, but they're on their way. Technical reports are much more informative and cannot be used in any way as normative report and as normative standard to work on that. We also recently published a workshop agreement that might be of interest to some of the projects because it's a way of getting patient consent when doing health innovation experiments with patients. And everybody needs to get their consent, and we have guidance on how to do that so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel yourself. So that's just one example. It's a very broad range of topics. I myself get overwhelmed if I look at all these standards. We have a lot of requirement standards, both on the functional side. What does it mean that you should have an electronic prescription? What needs to be in an electronic prescription? But also privacy requirements, security requirements, technical requirements, and very important, I think, for some of the research projects, we have data models. We have data models that actually model what data it needs to be captured and how to make sense of the data across different sectors in healthcare. Linked to those data models are also classifications, systems of concepts, a representation of clinical knowledge. So there's things in there that actually say, well, if we're talking about a referral from one hospital to, say, a specialty clinic, what does that mean? And what's the process behind that? What is that continuity of care that we're talking about? How does that relate? And what are the roles of different people? And what's the role of information in that? Of course, we also have the quality and reliability of processes and products. That's something that, as the ISO 9000, as I mentioned, we also have for the MDR, the medical device regulation, we have quality and reliability of the software development process. That's part of the medical device. So that's what we're doing. And one of the big things, of course, is architecture and interoperability. Especially the interoperability is key, has been key in the support of the digital transformation of health and care, as has been worked on by the European Commission. I will just quickly go through 3 examples. I don't have the time to really go into details there. Identification of medicinal products. A medicinal product has a substance, has a dose form, how is it delivered, and it has a strength. Those 3 pillars in the middle of what we call the wedding cake is captured together as a pharmaceutical product. That's what the actual product is. And then there's the medicinal product. That's the way it's being distributed in terms of a packaging and the actual name of the product. So this is really a very deep dive into what do we need to record about a substance, about a dose form, which strength, how do you calculate the strength? So there's also some implementation guidance around that. Next one, international patient summary. This is really where people see what's happening in the collaboration. if you are away from home, what happens with your data. MyHealth.eu is the cross-border part, and that's where we developed the patient summary, so that if you're in a hospital across the border away from home, at least your key data will be there. And finally, a whole different thing, labeling of health and wellness apps, a quality label, more or less like the energy label, and it has a number of categories and standardized questionnaires behind that to actually make sure that we get a dedicated answer to that. I've listed on these 3 slides links to projects that are taking this further. So if you get your hands on the PDF, you can actually click the links and go there.
Great, thank you, Robert.
Yes. This is just what I want to say. There is a wealth of knowledge encapsulated in standards. So please do not miss the opportunity to tap into it. And of course, contact HSbooster.
Thanks, Robert, for that. And yeah, and Robert's slides are available. So yeah, so some really valuable links in those. So Robert, thank you so much for that. We might move on now to our second speaker. So our second speaker today is Serkat Kola, and Serkat will follow on with the presentation on AI standards in healthcare. He's the CEO of Avomedics APS and co-convener of SEN TC 251 Working Group 1 and ISO TC 215, and also in Danish Standards S273 Health Informatics Technical Committee. So I'm going to hand over now to Serkat. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marita, and thank you to organize this for the invite, and thank you for all the audience spending the time listening to us. I hope I could give you something to chew on in the next 8 minutes. So let me just organize my. All right. Right, so quick overview here today is try to make it brief, although I have many slides. So first, looking into the AI space, then the healthcare status, and then the AI in healthcare, deployment of AI in healthcare, and then the application domains for AI in healthcare, and then the risks involved when AI is used in the healthcare sector. And then standardization of AI in the healthcare sector. So, given the most likely the diversity of the audience, it might be just good to give you this slide where we say what AI is and what the subdomains or subspaces of it. So, according to the ISO standard 22989, it is the capability to acquire, process, create, and apply knowledge held in the form of a model to conduct one or more given tasks. So that means basically an intelligent system. There are many different definitions of what AI is. For the last 25 years I've been involved there, I've come across a countless number of them. But this explains quite well what it is. AI has many fields. The one that's mostly used nowadays is actually machine learning with various algorithms. And the one that is probably most hyped currently is actually deep learning. So this is multi-layer neural networks with a huge number of inputs and hidden layers, which can model very complex spaces. Now, healthcare status and AI. Globally, we have some problems in the healthcare sector, and AI has a good potential to help us out there. So, chronic diseases is on the rise, especially multiple chronic diseases, together with the aging population globally, actually. And the healthcare sector is basically going through a quite in need of high budgets. About 8.5% of the, I think, European GDP is actually spent on the healthcare sector, and the need is rising, given the chronic conditions the rise of chronic conditions and aging population. And then we have also some level of inequality and inequity of healthcare services among the member states of Europe, which is also a challenge that the EU is trying to make it better. Sustainability is the element that we are also aiming for, given that we have conditions which require more and more budgets, and the problems are increasing. So the aims of EU within the healthcare sector is to eliminate or reduce inequities and inequalities among the member states and the population. The right of every EU citizen to timely access to affordable preventive care and high quality curative care, which is a key principle of the European Pillar of Social Rights. Now, AI applications within healthcare is increasing rapidly. This has increased especially within the last 5-6 years. And it takes day by day more areas where with new applications, with new use cases. Some of them I have highlighted here include primary care, emergency, research into rare diseases, biomedical research, improving the health, public health, management of healthcare systems, and drug designs, and many more. So there are actually pressing issues within the healthcare sector that could be helped quite well by AI tools. However, that depends, of course, how it's applied. So the potential of AI within healthcare sector is quite enormous, given that it can do quite a few things that humans, better than humans sometimes, but it has to be done correctly. So some key benefits that it includes when you apply AI within the healthcare, it's to improve the efficiency of clinicians, improving medical diagnosis and treatments. For example, let's say correct selection or optimized selection of therapies and modalities, optimization of allocation of human power, manpower, and technical resources, improving preventive care and patient prioritization, and then supporting remote monitoring and virtual care, which is very much supported by IoT devices nowadays. Some specific use cases of AI within healthcare include quite a range, actually already, and especially within the imaging sector, where, for example, radiology and dermatology, we see every day new apps coming out where imaging with interpretation by AI systems and machine learning algorithms is giving feedback. Diagnostic processes is another one, therapeutic decision-making, and clinical research. So the clinical workflow is actually can be very much supported by AI, since it can make quite interesting decisions and optimized decisions, given that it can have quite good, extract good, interesting insights from very complex data sets. Now, how do we categorize AI tools within the healthcare sector? There are some formal ways of doing it. One of them is based on the users. What groups of users are using it? It could be patients or citizens, clinicians and caregivers or healthcare professionals. It could be administrators, and it could be as well those who are making policies for the healthcare sector. The other one, it could be usage settings. So it could be within hospitals, primary care, for example, emergency care, or other areas within the healthcare sector, which includes pharmacy and laboratories. The other one, which is more used by the in the European report on artificial intelligence in healthcare, is actually the setting, which is clinical research, public health or administrative. Now, one thing that is very interesting to and important to look at is the risks involved when you apply AI in healthcare. There are different levels of AI use and risks within the healthcare. So it could be clinical, it could be technical and socio-ethical. And all of them have to be taken into account when you look into the risks of AI deployment within the healthcare. Now, the risk of losing trust in AI deployment in healthcare is actually quite important. And that could be both from the clinician side, but also the patient and the society at large, which means that if any of these, if these risks are not taken care of, we lose the momentum of using applied and making use of the good qualities of AI within the healthcare sector. So how do you assess risks of AI within healthcare sector? So there are classification of them, and there are some formal ways of doing it, of course, although standards for that is actually developing still, but it has to include the whole process from the first moment you start investigating whether you can use an AI for a use case until post-market surveillance. So that includes, of course, the design and development. That includes, of course, the duration of the data, the source of the data, how the data was generated, collected, etc. And then the algorithms themselves, how are they trained, how are they validated, how are they tested, and how are they tested from a control environment and then moved to a real-world environment. And then deployment of it, how is that deployed into the clinics or into the healthcare sector in general, and how it's used by the patient or the clinicians or administrators. Then once it's done, you need to also think about the risks involved when it's in the market, and how do you actually evaluate the risks involved there.
Serkat, we're coming to the end of your time, so you might just wrap up this.
Okay, great. Thank you for letting me know. So specific risks of AI in healthcare is actually, it could be some of them that I have listed here. It includes, of course, lack of transparency, privacy, which is very important, and which Robert slightly went on. And then the risks of AI tools used in the clinic. And some of them could include, for example, that the errors it generates in the clinic once it's been deployed, and could be as well unforeseen gaps between where it was deployed and when it's moved somewhere else. Now, this is a picture about the European AI Act, which was important for me to include so that people who are not maybe aware of this knows what it includes, and therefore their risk levels in there. You will see that once I share the slides and what it involves. Now, the standards are important, as I said, and I have actually listed quite a number of standards which follow from here on until quite a few pages. And all the standards with their descriptions are involved for AI in healthcare listed there. So I hope you can look at them and identify what you need, know more about them. Thank you very much, and I'm sorry for taking a little bit over time.
That's okay. Thank you so much. And again, Serkat has included a lot of really good information resources there for people. So can I just remind people, don't forget to put in, if you have questions or comments, put them into the chat or the QA section. Okay, our next presentation this afternoon is a double act. Delighted to welcome Pamela Hussey and Sebastian Dash to speak to us, and they're going to speak about how formal ontology addresses the heterogeneity challenge. So they are both working as researchers at the Centre for E-Integrated Care, which is the ADAPT Research Centre at Dublin City University in Ireland, and they're both very active participants in ISO TC 215 working group. So I'm going to hand over to Pamela and Sebastian.
Yeah, so we were talking there about the importance of the FAIR data principles and also the importance of data as a vehicle for the knowledge economy. We're also obviously working in the open source community and very interested in how we can build data-driven EU hubs for in the future. So in terms of health and social care, we consider harmonised standards to advance interoperability as key enablers, specifically to address the heterogeneous data problems and to deliver patient-centred or patient-facing integrated care services, and to advance this trustful AI in terms of secure processing environments. We think that it's really important with AI that we are on solid ground and that the data, we can absolutely have confidence that the data is meeting semantic and syntactic interoperability. Next slide. So historically in Ireland, standardisation of health data has been slow to evolve. And you can see here from the OECD Health at a Glance that we have been laggards really in terms of the data governance and the use of national data sets. However, we do have disease registries and we do use survey, census and admin data in order to support our health policy and strategic planning. And in the last 6 months, I'm happy to report, and probably our NSAI colleagues will talk more about this, that there have been a couple of significant publications in the area of policy and legislation, starting with the Health Information Bill and the AI Standards and Assurance Roadmap. And these will give us strong opportunities to move up and pick up the pace in terms of where we are with our work on national data sets and management of national data sets. Next slide, please. In the Centre of Integrated Care, which is where we've been working for the last 5 years in Dublin City University, our focus has been on digitalisation of healthcare and really looking at the design science for optimising value. We are strongly linked to the Open Innovation 2.0 principles, and they are really to benefit and empower and engage the citizen. So core to our focus really in addressing heterogeneity is to test and guide, specifically looking at digital standards, and to see how we can future, proof and provide reasonable information to larger entities on data dictionaries and catalogues development. Next slide, please. This is just an example here. I mean, Robert was talking about the ISO 9000 series. The Centre that in the Integrated Care has a number of transdisciplinary primary investigators, and a number of them have been doing work in different areas. The focus today to discuss with you is more to do with standards. However, it is important to recognise that we do see this horizontal approach is really important. If we just focus on vertical approaches to projects, that to somehow we might lose out on some of this. So our work includes work on digital literacy with Dr. Ciara White, working with the ICNP Research and Development Centre globally, and the next project with Dr. Katrina Murphy and Dr. Claire Timon as well. Next slide, please. Here, I'm really just showing this diagram from the perspective of the standard activities that we've engaged in. So myself and Savash's have been working on a use case approach with plan, do and check activities. We've created an organic standards roadmap by investigating the standards and determining how useful they are to us in our work. And hopefully then we can share that with other standards interested folks. We've also engaged in a standard called Systems and Concepts for Continuity of Care. This is a 2015 standard, and I believe a very important standard. And from the perspective of ISO and SEND, there's a task force now reviewing that standard to include the social care dimension to it as well. And Savash's, who's on the call, has actually developed and created an ontology for phase 1 of that work with CONSIS. And we have engaged with our domain experts in intellectual disability to progress that process. So the patient and domain expert facing use case development we consider is really, really important. If we don't have the valorization and use the SDGs and the World Health Organization patient-centered integrated care framework as pillars to develop this work, we then become almost, it's a tech project. I have a background in nursing for 20 years, and I can see that we are going to need domain experts to be able to look at our work and make sure that the value proposition is actually delivered through the projects that we engage with. And finally, we just disseminate all our work through open science to inform knowledge acquisition in the future. Next slide, please. When we talk to clinical people or domain experts, it's very important that they address the complexity by understanding what viewpoint that they are looking at some development work in. So we usually start our work by saying, you know, where we are in terms of viewpoints and models and frameworks. Now, the reference model for open distributed processing, while being old, has been resurrected in the work of the ISO 23903 standard, which I'll talk about in a minute. But in terms of this diagram here, we are very much located in 2, 3, and 4, the semantic and syntactic elements of what is required to feed good data for any future AI development process. I also just draw your attention to the fact that I've also linked back to Bernard Global's work, who has been one of the main orchestrators in terms of 23903 with other people in the team in Europe. And I strongly recommend people who are interested in this space go look at his work. Next slide, please. So for us, as Robert said, everybody has their favorite standards. Well, for me, defining a standards roadmap and applying different standards along that continuum of development to address data integration and access at the enterprise level has to start with architecture for a sustainable approach that will deliver a resilient value proposition. So for us, 23903 has been a very important standard, and that relates to interoperability and integration reference architectures, models and frameworks. Now, I will say to you that it's not something you're going to read going to bed. Okay, it is a big lift, but it is worth it. And it sets the stall for, I think, what we need to do in the future. Finally, just to say that obviously on the back of the ISO standards and DJUR standards, we need harmonization of standards, conformity assessment tools, and the legislative requirements to apply to the European standards organizations. And I've just given a link there again to some of the harmonized work that's happening at the European level. Next slide. We start with the patient and it's the patient story, and then we take that journey with the patient story to develop up the use cases. So in this, I'm just giving you a screen grab of some of the work that we've done in a micro-credential for interoperability that we piloted in DCU last year. And it's really a useful framework for people to actually participate in understanding interoperability in a streamlined way and engagement with standards. These stories are all based on my 20 years of practice and also some documentary analysis, which has been anonymized within the intellectual disability services that myself and Sebastian have worked on over the last 4 years. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry, just to say, before we go to the next slide, there is a link there to this work, which is freely available, and there's a password. If anybody has any problems with that, just come back to Nick or myself or Sebastian in HS Booster, and we are happy to give you the link. But the password for access to this is on the website link that I've given you here. Next slide. I'm going to hand over now to Dr. Sebastian Das, who has been the person who's orchestrated and built the ontology for systems and concepts for continuity care over the last couple of years. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. And as Robert mentioned and our previous speaker mentioned, that there is a in patient journey, there is a continuity of care, and this ISO standard 13940 is the only standard which is talking about continuity of care. And you know, patient move from primary care to secondary care and to tertiary care and next to home care. But there is no standard which connect all those patient journey or referral. And this is only standard from ISO which focus on the patient journey and patient-centered care. And in the last 3 years, as you can see, this standard published in 2015. As per protocol, after 5 years, it's go to the revision. So in the last 3 years, we work with various national experts from UK, Sweden, Netherlands, Italy, Australia, Canada to revise the CONSIS standard. And we are glad to inform that in last August, now committee draft is published, and we are now requesting some comment and their thought on our committee draft. Next. Yes, as Pam mentioned that there are many layers and there are many sections of the interoperability. But in our work, mainly my work, I am concentrating on level 3 and level 4, which is the semantic enrichment of the data model, as mentioned by Robert. Like in the clinical or electronic health record, there is a different data model used to transfer data from one system to another system. And then when you use formal ontology to generate those things, it have the semantic meaning intact, so that it is not by the human, also by the computer can understand the underlying meaning. And we use formal ontology to generate a revised version of the continuity of care data model. And while doing so, we also use top-level ontology, Dolce, to align our domain concept to the more general concept, so that it allow ultimate interoperability among the other model which is available, and also it's help to data integration when we try to integrate different data model from primary care, secondary care, or tertiary care. Next. As I mentioned, this formal ontology is freely available from bioportal, or you can click on this link. And in the below white space, you can see the our formal ontology for continuity care consists, and our top site, which is in gray, which is the ISO standard top level ontology Dolce, and how it's how we align those domain concept with the general concept, so that we can get the interoperability throughout the domain, like patient information not only available in the hospital record, but patient also go from hospital care to school or financial sector. So different domain in their lifetime they travel, and if we align those domain concept with the top level concept like mental object event, this will allow us to integrate all the domain concepts throughout their journey of a patient or a person. Next. And after generating the formal ontology, we can populate with the data the knowledge graph. Here you can see the screenshot of a knowledge graph which we generated during our project with ELITE, and different nodes with the different color represent the different class. And you can see, if you click particular node, you will also able to see the detailed information about that particular node. And this way you can see 360 view of a particular patient or particular node, and also you can see the direct explicit link, how they are connected, which is not available in the existing relational database format. Only with a knowledge graph you can see those kind of explicit connection throughout their journey, and it will also help to check if one person is travel different hospital, or how many patients are admitted or invigilated by one particular doctor. So that is the good thing with the knowledge graph. Next. And here in the last slide, you can see our latest publication, which also got the best paper award in Oslo conference. And here, as Robert mentioned, he's also expert in HL7 standard, and we took HL7 standard and connected with continuity of care to generate the formal ontology, which help the data interoperability. And you can also see other key paper which you can read it later, and which will give you more information regarding our work. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Pamela and Sebastian. And we'll move quickly on, folks, to the next our next presentations. So the next two presentations are an opportunity for us to showcase two Horizon Europe projects, one on value care and one on eye health. So first up is Almudena Sanchez Ferrer, and she's going to speak about the value care project. And Almudena is an R&D senior project manager, and she's involved in that particular project. So I'll hand over to you, Almudena. Thank you.
Thank you, Marita. Thanks to HSbooster team for inviting me. I am very glad to be here with such an outstanding panel of experts. This presentation is about the standardization in value care project. So the first part of my presentation will be just a quick introduction to the project and its aims. And secondly, we will link with how standards have been taken into account as a task within this EH 2020 project. So as we already have seen from other speakers' presentations, healthy aging have become a key challenge for European countries that are experiencing growth in the number of older persons in their population. Also, there is a higher incidence of chronic diseases and a race of technological innovations. So Value Care Project aims to create or enhance the value-based methodology for integrated care supported by ICT for better understand the sustainability of the future of the healthcare system. So Value Care Project aims to enhance the quality of life and health outcomes of older people with cognitive impairment, frailty, or other multiple chronic diseases such as diabetes, by delivering personalized integrated health and social care services, also better outcomes for all the people and improve the care experience. It also aims to improve the staff satisfaction and greater efficiency in the use of their resources and the coordination of care. As you can see in the map, value care has been integrated and implemented in 7 different pilot sites around Europe, in Croatia, in Spain, Greece, Italy, Portugal, and the Netherlands. In order to avoid being too general in presenting all the scientific and technical knowledge being generated in the project, I will focus on the pilot implementation that is taking place right now in Valencia, in Spain, which is focused on improving care and quality of life of both frail older adults, but also their families. By implementing value-based methodologies backed by a digital solution that integrates health and social care and offers a personalized care plan for the elderly based on the socio-health outcomes. So the target group or the target population are people over 65 years of age. And we have already achieved the number of 240 recruited participants. But what we do with all these people participated in the project during the implementation phase? We have a very intensive period of recruitment where they have to sign an informed consent, and also for the control group, they have to complete several activities and baseline questionnaires for evaluation, apart from a personalized care plan, which is made directly with the health and social professionals. But where does the ICT component fit into all of this? Well, the digital solution aims to establish the objectives to be achieved for the participant, settled together with the health and social care professionals. So the digital solution is composed of 2 different parts: the mobile table or table application for end users and the dashboard for professionals. That facilitate the compliance of the goals settled, while it's going to enable the follow-up of the professional. And here I would like to highlight the whole process of co-creation with the end users that we have made in order to develop this digital solution. Because in the IT co-design, we have involved end users in a qualitative process of data gathering and analysis to assure that the digital solution accomplishes the requirements expressed by the end users, that it's going to create an actual value, no? Through their participation, with their involvement and their engagement during the whole process in order to personalize digital ICT solution as much as possible. So we had 3 different rounds of co-design with all the people, informal caregivers, health and social professionals, and managers also from the health care centers. We have been made different type of activities, such as national seminar, work cafes, and focus group. And some of the topics that have been discussed in this co-design session includes, well, the value-based care concept. What does this concept mean to them? What should be taken into account from the perspective about the value care digital solution? I highlight this. I think this is very important because the end users were very, very, very excited about the idea that their opinions would have been taken into account when creating the digital solution for themselves. So round after round of co-design, meanwhile the digital solution was taking shape, they realized that their wish list has been considered. So they were delighted to feel like a part of the project and also of the solution. But for us, all this feedback has allowed us to evaluate the usability and the readiness of the digital solution based on the requirement of these end users. So after this co-design process across the 7 pilots, what is clear to us is for sure that there is an incredible value of all this knowledge, best practices and lessons learned that have been generated for the IT health sector. So our question was, so what can be done with all this knowledge in relation to standardization? So here I list the steps we take in terms of standardization in relation to the results of the project. So firstly, we have been doing questions within the whole consortium, within the project, and having internal workshops in order to answer some questions. For example, how the work done in value care about the digital solution can be contribute to the system standard, or other way around, is value care providing any new standards? Is the value care digital solution able to be connected or integrated with other solution or products? And if the value care digital solution is following existing standards so far. So in order to answer those questions in the more professional way we have been meeting with the national body of standardization in Spain, which is UNE. This entity have given us the possibility to understand 10 processes of standardization and its workflow and timeline. And on the other hand, we have been meeting also with ISHAM in order to understand how our work can benefit them in order to update their questionnaires. So moreover, we realized about HSbooster service, which I highly recommend, as it leads us to understand how the team of value care project can adopt current standard and best practices at various levels, health, care, and technology, and to understand how the results of the project could inform or influence the existing standardization working groups. So to sum up, that I see Marita on the screen, I have to say that the service has been instrumental in guiding the initial phases of the project deliverable and the knowledge regarding the standardization results, thanks also to the support of the received by the expert. And also, to finalize, I would like to highlight the importance of this service for project dissemination, as today we are doing, that bring us the possibility to foster synergies between projects and people and enhancing the awareness on standardization within this marvelous work on European projects. So thank you very much for your attention.
And Modena, thank you so much. That was really interesting. We'll now move on to George, who is going to speak to us about the iHelp project. And George is a research associate at the University of Piraeus Research Centre, and he's also a PhD student at that university. So George, over to you to talk to us about the iHelp project.
Yes, thank you, Marita, for the introduction. Hello, everyone. At first, a big thanks to the organizers and the whole HSbooster team for the opportunity to participate in this excellent panel with experts with vast experience and expertise. As Marita mentioned, my name is George Manias, Research Associate and PhD student at the Department of Digital Systems in the University of Piraeus, Greece, as also the project coordinator of the iHelp EU-funded project. My main research interests lay on the domains of natural language processing, multilingual classifiers, and semantic web, among others. With my current presentation, we will try to delve into the definition and specification of the so-called holistic health records that are introduced in the context of the iHelp project, as well to highlight their key benefits towards the improvement of personalized prevention intervention strategies in the pancreatic cancer, and to see how the utilization of the HSbooster service supported us in our goal and enhanced our outcomes. Next slide, please. Great. In order to do so, at first, we will be introducing the concepts of the iHelp project and the initially data-related identified problems that in our project seeks to address through the design implementation of the HHRs. I'm sure that few of you have already started to wonder what are the holistic health records, the HHRs. Thus, their definition and their main principles will then be presented. As also stated in the title, the holistic health records go beyond the HL7 FHIR standard, a widely used data modeling standard for medical data. Hence, a key topic of this presentation is also how the iHealth project builds upon and goes beyond the HL7 FHIR standard. And finally, what are the key benefits from this novel approach that we follow in the context of the project? Finally, the contribution of the HSS, Gabriele, yes, great. Finally, the contribution of the HS Booster service and the key outcomes that we gain from this service, along with our achievements from the adoption of the HHR, will be presented. Next slide, please, Gabriele. Thank you very much. Now, the iHealth concept. The iHealth is a novel personalized healthcare framework targeting on two main objectives, highly related with the overall data modeling and data management aspects, along with some others, of course, that are more, let's say, artificial intelligence and clinical related. At first, the iHealth, the main concept at the heart of the iHealth is the collection, integration, and management of health-related data from various sources, focusing on the pancreatic cancer in a standardized structure that is called Holistic Health Records, HHR. Later, through the design implementation of advanced AI techniques that will exploit holistic health records to facilitate new insights into the underlying risk of pancreatic cancer and foster early predictions, as well as the design of enhanced personalized prediction and intervention models. Next slide, please. Thank you very much. Now, some of the key problems that we faced and this framework seeks to address are related with the data themselves and more specifically with the interoperability, modeling, and accuracy. As we know, the modern healthcare domain is being described by divergent standards. Thus, different healthcare providers use different EHR, CMR tools and adopt divergent data representations. Several standards exist, and also custom structures are widely used as well by the healthcare providers. Moreover, they fail to describe the complete health information. The adoption of novel data sources in the healthcare domain, in the modern healthcare domain, like wearable, mobile applications, and etc., introduce new protocols and data formats, streams a big amount of data that the above-mentioned standards fail to completely support, along with the possibility of representing non-clinical events. Also, this leads to the increasing need to differentiate the clinical information. The health-related data recorded by the patients needs to be differentiated from the information recorded by the healthcare organizations themselves, moving towards improved and more personalized patient-centered healthcare strategies. And finally, last but not least, we have low semantic interoperability. As also presented before in one of the presentations, different medical terminologies, vocabularies, ontologies are widely used, while the utilization of ontologies may use on stronger semantic interoperability. And also the conversion from one terminology to another is not a trivial aspect. Moving to the next slide. These problems seek to be addressed in the context of the iHealth project by the introduction and adoption of the holistic health records. The HHRs is a data model aiming at capturing clinical events and laboratory test results in the sense of primary data, but also on the properties about lifestyle, social care, personal measurements, behavioral habits, nutritional habits of the patients, as we call them secondary data. So this is why we also call them holistic, because they seek at capturing all health determinants that can be relevant for health risk detection and personal health care of a patient. In that sense, we extract more knowledge from integrated patient data, and we are able to define the target data representation to which the raw datasets need to be converted. Different categories and data are provided and described through the utilization of this data model, And from its beginning, it's compliant with the standard HL7 fire data format, so that the interoperability with systems that adopt such a standard is guaranteed by its design. Now, next slide, please, Gabriele. Thank you very much. Now, as previously mentioned, the holistic health records build upon, but also go beyond the HL7 standard. Thus, the key achievements and processes have been utilized in order to introduce a concrete and novel data model. These are mainly related with the approach that have been followed in order to model the data and the integration of knowledge and techniques from the domains of machine learning and semantic web. More precisely, we managed to go beyond the HL7 through the modeling of both primary and secondary data, mapping into the FHIR standard where possible, but also introducing extensions in terms of variables and codes, and especially in terms of the secondary data that we capture from wearables and mobile applications that cannot very well represented by the FHIR standard. Moreover, the HHR model is designed at an ontological level. As also mentioned, the utilization of ontology provides higher semantic interoperability. This approach leads to two differences in contrary to the FHIR model. The multiplicity constraints on the properties and attributes of the entities, the classes, represent real-world existence constraints and not integrity ones, as stated in the FHIR standard. Moreover, HHR uses abstract classes with no direct corresponding type in FHIR, but with related supertypes of FHIR resources types. Also, a HHR class may have explicit subclasses that are not represented as distinct resource classes in FHIR, and this has led the HHR model to explicit subclasses that do not need a related FHIR extension. Finally, the HHR model uses some specific stereotypes and patterns to indicate ontological distinctions that cannot be expressed in standard UML format. Following this integrated and holistic approach, the adoption of the HHR introduces key benefits to our project and hopefully the whole healthcare domain. Let's see now the key benefits. At first, the HHRs promote data integration and analysis. Unlike FHIR, which is mainly focused on data exchange, the HHR model is intended to also support data integration and analysis. Moreover, it is less ambiguous and more understandable. The high specialization of the HHR model and highly focused on the pancreatic cancer and oncology domain makes it less ambiguous and more understandable. Moving to the next slide. Thank you very much. This leads to improved personalized patient care as we capture the whole information about the health of a patient, speaking about primary but also secondary data, and also to enhance patient engagement. The HHRs can empower patients by giving them access to their own health information. Now, let's see how the HSbooster service has enhanced our goal and gain our knowledge as concerns the processes and internal procedures of a standard like HL7 FHIR. So let's move to the next slide and see how the adoption of HSbooster service has enhanced our goal. The goal is to get the HHR as an official extension to the FHIR standard. That was our ultimate goal. It's not reinventing the wheel, to borrow an expression by Robert, rather than the engagement proposition and encapsulation of specific extensions to the HL7 FHIR that it lacks so far, resulting and contributing to an improved and more integrated digital care pathway. So, through the HSbooster service and the consultation of the experts, we managed to identify the key milestones or processes towards having HHR adopted as an official FHIR extension. And to better understand the process for making proposals for extensions to the FHIR standard, this led to increased engagement with the FHIR standard and introduced the HHR model as formal extension to the FHIR. Thanks to the HSbooster service and the experts that supported us during this period, we are able now to follow a concrete roadmap to strengthen and further exploit our approach. Moving to the last slide. Great, thank you very much. To conclude, through the design and utilization of the HHR, we are able to introduce an integrated environment for addressing the challenge of providing multidimensional analytic views on integrated patient data, to enable the collection, integration, management of health-related data from various sources, to provide a holistic view of individualized data obtained from medical as well as from lifestyle, behavioral, and social aspects, and finally, to enable the interoperability, sharing, and reuse, and interlinking of data and information towards the improvement of a digital care pathway.
Great, George. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Happy to answer any question.
Great. Thank you so much, George. Okay, we're running a little bit behind time, but not too bad. So thank you to all the speakers for keeping very close to time. And also I want to thank all the speakers for doing a really good job on answering the questions that people have been asking. So keep, putting in your questions either into the chat or into the Q&A section. But maybe we'll just take one or two questions now, and then we'll keep going with the rest of the presentations so that we can make sure, obviously, there's a bit of more time at the end for some questions, and also that we finish on time for you. So maybe I might just ask a question to Serkat about AI and AI in healthcare. And thank you, your presentation was really interesting on that new emerging area. Maybe Serkat, would you say a few more words about standards and research in AI and what role they can play in mitigating risk? And I suppose maybe allaying or avoiding some of the fears that patients and health professionals and health providers might have about AI in healthcare. And I think that relates into a question that M. Shakrala asked earlier about, maybe health professionals feel a little bit of concern about their liability. So maybe how standards can help manage risk and allay fears.
Yes, well, thank you, Marita. That's a very good question. And thanks to the question from M. Shakrala, I could see that. So we need to look at, when you talk about liability, trustworthiness, traceability, explainability, and literally who to blame for any errors, it's something that exists very strongly within the healthcare sector. So traditionally, this problem of a medical error has lied in the center between the patient and the medical professional. And it's not always easy to actually identify the cause of it. So now, when it comes to AI use within the healthcare sector, it's another, actually many levels of more added complexity to this problem, because there are three main categories of complexities added to this problem. One of them is that the multi-access that are involved within for the AI tool that's used. So it's basically coming down to the data managers, the developers, the designers, the users, the deployers, the integrators, the administrators. That's one. The other one is the governance frameworks that are involved. So there are many frameworks involved when you deploy a AI tool in the healthcare sector. So they might come from different actors, they might come from different businesses or producers, manufacturers. They could be something that is from the public sector, healthcare sector. So there are many different levels, multiplicity of this governance in this picture. The other one is actually, it's not easy always to identify the actual cause of a error in an AI system, because there are so many different levels and layers involved when you deploy an AI system into the healthcare sector. Everything from data creation, preparation, transformation, validation, modeling, and deployment, etc. And the final one, of course, is the usage of it, whether the use of the tool was done correctly, or was, for example, the data provided to the actual tool that was developed and tested both in the control environment and the actual real-world environment. But the data that's used to be tested on and get answered on might not be the same, or might be very erroneous. It could be from a machine that's very differently set up, for example. So this is very difficult. And here standards can help to reduce that complexity of non-knowledge, basically, because of the complexity involved and the different layers. What standards make this a more standardized way of identifying what has passed different levels, what has gone through different standards. It would make it much easier to actually know what could potentially have gone wrong, potentially a standard that was not applied at some point, potentially that was deemed unnecessary because there, for example, there too much or enough clinical evidence that for example, the tool gave the correct answers the X% of times. So although that shouldn't have passed, because the medical device regulations, the quality management system, for example, ISO 13485, is very strict about what evidence should be provided in order for it to be certified, etc. But this is a challenge that the healthcare sector faces, both with new tools and tradition as well. Thank you.
Serkan, thank you. That was a very complex question, but really good to get your insights on that. I see lots of the speakers are answering the questions in the Q&A, so that's great. So maybe we'll take one more now, and then obviously, folks, please keep adding your questions, and we'll obviously pick any others up then maybe at the end of the session. Maybe if I turn to Pamela and Sebastian, obviously the work that you're doing on the ontology to enable data interoperability and trying to address heterogeneity challenges. Maybe would you say a few words about some of the challenges that health services have on the ground in getting the benefits of data interoperability for patients? And is there more that maybe the health research community can do to help with those challenges?
Yeah, will I start, Savash? Yeah. So for me, I think it's very much about digital literacy and a culture shift in terms of how important it is for us to work together across and between the service providers on patient-facing systems and services. And I think the policy is there, and I think there's a real appetite for this on the ground with the clinically focused people. But I think there's in the middle there, we need to do more around education and training. I also think we need to see leadership, strong leadership at the top. I remember our old colleague Bill Grimson used to say standards with teeth. And to be honest with you, that's probably a good way of putting it. It's like there's a responsible person, a responsible organization, and it's their job to make sure that we can provide that data. Obviously, the appropriate infrastructure is critically important. And from my perspective, there is so much signing now with the EHDS and things like the TEDIS report, and specifically I'd point people to Work Package 7, which is Connecting the Dots, which is freely available online, to see how the technical reports are written and how and what we need to do. So I guess I'll hand over to Sebastian in case he has something else to add there, Marita. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Pam. Yeah, I think my learning is working with the domain expert is needed to implement all those standard or ontology which I am talking about. But until now, the ad hoc work is going on. Like for example, any country or big hospital try to implement EHR, they are just giving lots of million money to a corporate sector without knowing what their need. And then corporate company like Microsoft, or you just name anything from US company, they just implement what they wanted to implement. As Pam mentioned, we need digital literacy, because in the end, nurse and doctor going to use it, not the computer scientist. So with collaboration and literacy, we can engage while designing the process, and don't just give the money to the company, but ask what you needed. And this way only we can able to achieve interoperability. Just give an example, like where we got the throughout like proper interoperability. If I say air traffic control, as you can see, all airlines who are mentioning are following only one standard. So only in the airline sector we got full interoperability. There is a shared code among all United Nations country, but in the health sector is controlled by private sector and sometimes public sector, and there is a like authority, and they are making some decision which is not justified, and that's why we are not getting full interoperability. But it's a very vital sector because it's related with health. So I think with the joint collaboration and more digital literacy we can able to achieve, and also by European Commission law, and like with this initiative like HSbooster, we will achieve interoperability very soon. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Pamela, Sebastian. That was really, really good and insightful responses. I think in the interest of time, we'll move on, and just to encourage you all, there's still loads of opportunities to put in questions, so please, please do, both into the chat and into the Q&A. So what I might do now is currently move to our second part of our presentations today. So we have 3 speakers in our second part. And as I said, at the end of those, we'll have an opportunity for some questions again. So first up is Silvana Togneri McMahon. She's an expert in health informatics standards at the Centre for E-Integrated Care and also the Lero SFI Research Centre for Software at Dublin City University here in Ireland. And she's going to speak about risk management standards and digital transformation of healthcare. So I might hand over to you, Silvana.
Thanks for that introduction there, Marita. Are you seeing my slides okay?
Yeah, we can see.
Yeah, we
Perfect.
can indeed.
That's great. Thank you so much. Yeah, so thanks to everybody for your participation so far, and thank you for the opportunity to take part in this great webinar, great panel so far, very interesting talks. So I'm going to talk about risk management standards and the digital transformation in healthcare. And really what I'm going to do in this particular piece is I'm going to talk a little bit about my experience in being involved in standards development activities. So I'm going to be talking to you about my work that I've completed since 2012, when I was lucky enough to start getting involved with standards. And I'm going to take you through a little bit of the evolution of standards around risk management in healthcare and how that has all happened. So just bear with me for 1 second. So yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about the digital transformation in healthcare. I think we've kind of touched on that, and a couple of the speakers have kind of touched on that already. So Serkat and Almudena have talked a little bit about, you know, the increased instances of chronic disease. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I'm going to talk a bit about risk management of health information technology systems, but I'm going to also take you back to a time when we talked about this in the context of medical IT networks. So I'm going to talk to you about the development of risk management standards and technical reports in this area. And the revision of the main risk management standard in this area, so the IEC 80001-1, and how that standard has kind of changed and evolved since the original publication in 2010. I'm also going to give you some information on some other useful standards in this area as well. So again, just trying to illustrate how things have kind of changed since 2010, which seems like a very long time ago at this stage. And then I'm just going to present some conclusions. So as I mentioned, some of the other speakers have talked about this increased prevalence of chronic disease that we have at the moment that we see. We combine that then with an aging population, and we see that this creates a major challenge for healthcare systems. So where we would have had, you know, a kind of model of care where we would have seen patients coming to healthcare delivery organizations for acute episodic periods of care, we've seen now a transition to there being a longer relationship between patients and their caregivers. So in order for this kind of relationship that has evolved, so, you know, going from those kind of episodes of care where we saw our doctors once and then didn't see them hopefully for a couple of years, we are now, you know, seeing them much more regularly. And the only way that we can really support this relationship is by using IT, and in particular using health information technology systems. So as the systems have evolved, risk management standards have also had to respond to the changing use of technology in healthcare. So what we saw was that originally, as I mentioned when we talked about this, we had this idea of a medical device that was incorporated into an IT network. And, you know, we had a very, very strict definition of a medical IT network, which was any IT network that had at least one medical device on it. And traditionally what would happen is when a medical device was designed to be incorporated into a network, the provider of the device would also provide the network. So we ended up in a situation where in a hospital, you could have thousands of, you know, self-contained networks that didn't really talk to each other. Increasingly, what we see is that medical devices are being designed to exchange electronic information with other devices, including other medical devices. So what we see is that medical devices are really very much being designed to be incorporated into healthcare providers' general IT network. So we're putting our medical devices, which are, you know, things that are strictly regulated, onto IT networks where we have lots of different types of traffic. All kinds of everything is basically on there. So we're introducing additional risks. We no longer have the kind of control around, that kind of setup of medical devices that we used to have. So in order to address some of the risks around this, the IEC 80001 standard was published in 2010. The name of the standard was looking at application of risk management for IT networks incorporating medical devices, and it was looking to address those risks. So I'm just going to take you back a little bit into, some of the kind of evolution around that. So where the IEC 80001 standard came from is that in 2003 and 2004, there was a cluster of reports of cyber attacks on hospitals, and the FDA were made aware of these cyber attacks. So they started to look at the idea of providing cybersecurity guidance for, medical devices that were incorporating off-the-shelf software. But in looking at that, they realized that the whole network integration of medical devices needed to be looked at in a much more holistic way. So the IEC 80001 standard was developed. It was aimed at responsible organizations or healthcare delivery organizations, but also was aimed at medical device manufacturers and other IT providers. And what the standard was trying to do was trying to protect three key properties of the network. So looking at the safety of the network, the effectiveness of the medical device in terms of its ability to achieve the intended outcome for the patient, and also security. So making sure that, the assets were protected in terms of their confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So that's what the original standard tried to do. So the standard was published in 2010, but what actually happened was it was realized that there wasn't a large adoption of the standard. So this is where I got involved in 2012, was looking at the development of a technical report. So I acted as the international project leader, author, and editor of 80001-2-7. What it did was it revised the requirements of the standard and broke them up into different parts. So it came up with a process reference model where the requirements of the standard were defined in terms of processes, a process assessment model where we introduced the concept of activities to actually achieve those processes, and a measurement framework, and then an assessment method, which was a repeatable approach to assessment of the capability of risk management processes. So this helped a little bit, but again, because of the way that the standard was developed, it was considered to be quite complex and difficult to implement. So as Suvashis mentioned, after 5 years, the standard was revised. So we were looking at the revision of the IEC 80001, the 2010 version. So again, because things had kind of evolved in the way that I mentioned originally, we could no longer kind of put that box around the medical IT network. So the scope of the 80001 standard, the second edition, was revised. So again, it was looking at this broader kind of idea of health information technology systems rather than the kind of defined scope that we had previously of a medical IT network. So I just want to point out, that's just kind of to give you a little bit of a flavor of the evolution of the standards in this space. But since the work on those two revisions of the standard and the technical report, Joint Working Group 7 has also produced some other really good, really useful standards that kind of reflect that evolution. So the main one that I want to talk about today is the 81001 standard, which was published in 2021. It looks at health software and health IT system safety, effectiveness, and security, and it talks about those in terms of principles and concepts. So again, it broadens the kind of scope that we had talked about previously, so it's more aligned with the current scope of the 80001 standard. So it looks at health software and health IT systems and brings in the concept of the socio-technical ecosystems that other speakers have kind of talked about. It also recognizes that, again, the kind of very strict definitions that we had previously no longer kind of fit what we actually see in terms of healthcare systems. So it talks about the concept of a system of systems. And it also defines a specific life cycle for health IT. So again, looking at it through those different stages. Robert talked a little bit earlier about the idea of a wedding cake. In this particular working group, we have a temple. So the 80001 standard is one of the foundational standards. So it talks about concepts and definitions that underpin standards, not only for accountable healthcare delivery organizations, but also accountable manufacturers. And this is a really significant step forward in terms of, how we define terms and definitions and concepts in this area, because it basically means that if you talk to somebody who's implementing a standard that is for medical device manufacturers, we're using the same terminology as the terminology that's been used by accountable healthcare delivery organizations. So again, a really beneficial standard to take a look at. So just in conclusion, as I mentioned, the 2010 version of the IEC 80001 standard was very good in terms of helping HDOs in managing the risks associated with placing a device onto an IT network, but it was considered to be a bit complex and difficult to implement. The technical report was then developed to try and address that and kind of foster greater adoption of the standard. And the revision of the 80001 standard, which I didn't really mention, but one of the things that was done in terms of the scope of the revision was to make that standard more closely aligned with other generic risk management standards and also management system standards. So generic risk management standards like 31,000 and then management system standards like 9001. So as you can see from that little bit of an evolution, we have a state now where basically risk management standards are evolving to respond to the digital transformation in healthcare.
Great, Savannah, thank you so much. And thanks so much for keeping so well to time.
No problem.
We might come next to Linda Hendy, and Linda then will be followed by Barry Cox. So Linda is from NSAI's Health Informatics Standards Committee, and she's going to speak a little bit about how you can get involved in standardisation and what are the ways to do that. So Linda, I might hand over to you.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Marita. Yeah, I'll be giving the perspective from the national standards body and how we facilitate engagement in the healthcare sector. I'm a project manager for that sector with NSAI. And today I'll give an overview of what is a standard, why you might use them, who develops them, the types of deliverables, and how they can be used to support regulation. And just give a brief overview of some of the new developments that are happening in the healthcare sector. Hopefully those slides are coming through, are they? Let me just get the next slide. Yes, firstly, a brief overview of NSAI. I'll quickly go through this. I'm from the Standard Development section, and we're the National Standards Body for Ireland. We're a member body to many of the international standard development organisations, and we facilitate participation and contribution to standards, and we also publish the standards, and they're available on our published standard catalogue. We offer certification services where we can assess the application of standards that organizations use, and this is mainly the management system standards. Some of them have been mentioned already, such as quality management, risk management, environmental management. And we also are a notified body for the medical device regulation and the IVD, so we're involved in conformity assessment there. Our legal metrology ensure that consumers get the right weights and measures when they're buying products, such as your kilo of potatoes or whatever. And then we also have our National Metrology Lab who maintain the measurement standards nationally. So starting out, what is a standard? Well, this definition is taken from Regulation 1025, which is a regulation that all standard development organizations have to adhere to. So a standard is developed by an international standards body, and their use is completely voluntary. So a manufacturer can decide how they demonstrate safety or performance of their product by using standards, or they can use other means such as product testing or type testing. It's down to those who are placing product on the market to determine how they do that. There's four main types of standards. We call them fundamental standards, which might give you your definitions, terminology, or signs and symbols that are agreed. Then there can be testing standards that might give you analytical methods or testing requirements. We have performance standards, which would look at product specifications or for services or product or performance criteria. And so I suppose standards try to be technology neutral, and they set out a performance criteria that needs to be met. And then finally, we have kind of risk or management system standards, and they address processes and systems that organizations need to have to ensure consistency in the processes they apply to either manufacture or to maintain IT security or to manage risk, etc. So the benefits of standards, well, particularly in Europe, it's very good because it's one standard across all members. All member bodies in CEN and CENELEC have to adopt all European standards as national standards and withdraw national conflicting standards. It's a good way of spreading knowledge and promoting good practice. It's focus on consumer safety, the safety and performance of products. And there's a specific group of standards that assist with the legal obligations and regulatory compliance. And I'll go through these now. They're known as harmonised standards. And a harmonised standard is mandated by the Commission, who requests the European standard development organisations to develop standards to support the regulations. Not all European standards are harmonised standards. They're only the ones that are published by the European Commission, and they're published in the official journal of the EU. They give a presumption of conformity to the relevant general safety and performance requirements in a regulation. So it's a very useful, that presumption of conformity is very useful for manufacturers of products and services because they can get automatic compliance with the regulation. And as I've said, not all standards are harmonised, and you can tell a harmonised standard because it usually contains an Annex Z at the back of it, which will list how the standard meets a particular regulation or requirement. So in the healthcare sector, there's a couple of regulations that would apply. As I've mentioned, manufacturers are responsible for product safety and placing it on the market. And for the medical device sector, there's two, the MDR, or the medical device regulation, and the IVDR. And if a manufacturer meets all the applicable requirements of those regulations, they can CE mark their product. And the standards are very useful there. There's a number of standards already published in the official journal of the EU for the MDR and the IVDR, but that list of standards will continue to grow. There's product-specific standards, which tend to be vertical, and then there's horizontal standards, which would apply kind of irrespective of the type of product you manufacture. And this usually covers your labeling, your packaging, your risk management, and your quality management. So they are all useful standards, a whole series of them that manufacturers have to comply with in order to CE mark their product. And then there's a new regulation that's coming down the track. It's the European Health Data Space Regulation. And again, I think standards will be useful and helpful in meeting that regulation as well. So you might say, well, what are the standard deliverables? These are the key deliverables, and they're the same types of deliverables produced by both CEN, CENELEC, and ISO/IEC. At the top, we have a standard. This is the most the rigorous, goes through a more lengthy process for development, and it's based on consensus for those who's involved, and the member bodies are asked to vote and approve on it. The key difference between ISO and CENELEC is that, again, as I've mentioned, national member bodies have to publish all European standards as national standards and withdraw any conflicting standards. Then we have technical specifications and technical reports. These are lesser consensus documents, and the TSs are probably not full standards, might be pre-standards, where the TR is kind of a snapshot or survey or state of the art, and might be useful as a possible deliverable for research outputs. And there's one other deliverable that was already mentioned as well, which is a workshop agreement. And that doesn't go through a standard development process per se, but it's just an agreement among a group who have identified a workshop. It would be a good idea to standardize some information, and Robert already mentioned one on consent. So CEN and ISO produce workshop agreements as a standard deliverable for particularly a new area. Just to give you a brief overview of the process, they go through a rigorous process. Work has to get approved, and you have to have at least 5 member bodies agreeing to contribute to the work. It goes through a number of different iterations and review processes that require balloting. And the inquiry stage, stage 40, is an important part in a standard development because that's the public inquiry stage. And as was mentioned as well, I think Savash mentioned, all standards go through a review or systematic review. So once they're published, they're asked, does the standard need to be updated? This happens every 3 to 5 years. And the TRs and TSs will go through a shorter balloting process. They may have only one balloting stage. So they can be published in about 18 months, whereas standard can take 2 to 3 years, it all depends how long consensus it takes to reach. And just, I suppose, to be aware that the work programs of all the TCs are available, so there's transparency. They're based on consensus. You have to agree on the content, and impartiality. So there's a chair, a convener assigned to all the working groups and TCs to make sure that everyone provides an input. So it is a pretty dynamic process.
Linda,
Then just Oh, sorry, I'll move on.
Remind you here.
Yeah, okay. Just briefly then, just to show you the member bodies of ISO, CEN and CENELEC, they're all listed there, and these are links. And also the list of technical committees are also available. So if you get these afterwards, the links are there and you'll be able to search that. And just to show you some of the key areas that we monitor with some of our local mirror committees, for the medical devices, it's a large area. I've only given you some. There's standards for clinical evaluation, risk and quality. 13485 is the quality management system, and 14971, they're fundamental standards for the medical device sector. We also have the health informatics, and a new area is healthcare. You're looking at healthcare organization management, looking at a quality management system standard for hospitals, and medical imaging is another new area, and a pre-standard group, biotechnology is another one. They're looking at a lot of methodologies and biobanking standards. So new topics, we're looking at additive manufacture, artificial intelligence, that's been covered already, personalized digital health, that's a hot topic, and organ on chips, there's a focus group looking at that and trying to look at a standardization roadmap. So key takeaway message, contact HS Booster or your member body. You can research what standards exist, the work programs, look at what deliverables you could look at, and you can get involved and contribute to it. And I think that what Pamela has mentioned is developing a roadmap for standards and how they might apply to your project is a very good idea and something to look to. And with that, I will finish. So thank you very much.
Linda, thanks so much, and sorry for hurrying you on there. I just want to make sure we still have a little bit of time at the end for some questions. So folks, it's your last chance. Keep putting those questions in if you want to get them answered. You really have significant experts on the webinar today, so use their skills and expertise. So last speaker of our day, Barry Cox, and Barry also works in NSAI, and he's going to speak about the European Code of Practice for researchers in standardization. So I might hand you over to Barry now.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Marita. We'll try and keep up with the high level of presentations that were very informative today. Try and keep that bar. So my name is Barry Cox, and I have the pleasure of working with Linda, Marita, and a lot of other people on the call. And I'm here today to talk to you about the Code of Practice and Standardization for Researchers. So what is the Code of Practice on Researchers? Well, the new Code of Practice on Standardization aims to contribute to successful integration of research and innovation with standardization. It provides guidance to researchers and innovators by identifying elements of good practice. It concerns research and innovation activities without any technology barriers. It targets research and innovation actors within a wide range of technology readiness levels, from terminology and concepts through testing to interoperability and performance. The Code of Practice is a hands-on guide that provides a set of recommendations grouped under the following: the higher education institutes and research and innovation organizations, the project partners, and the policy and stakeholders. And the European Commission recognizes the important standards play in bridging the gap between research and market uptake. Together with stakeholders, they've developed the Code of Practice to ensure that research and innovation results create remarkable solutions and respond to societal challenges. So next up, we have the higher education institutes and private and public research and innovation organizations. So the Code of Practice recommends the following guidance: develop a standardization policy, consider standardization activities in the career development plans, provide for education and training in standardization, make technology transfer offices fit for standardization, develop an indicator and evaluation system. And next, the Code of Practice delivers the following advice for project partners. So to analyze the existing standards landscape, to develop a common consortium strategic position on standardization, to involve experienced partners to make standards a tangible part of the project, to invest in stakeholder engagements, to have realistic outcomes and impacts, and ensure sustainability beyond the project duration. Furthermore, the Code of Practice recommends the following guidelines for project partners. Member states to promote standardization as a means of knowledge valorization, for standards development organizations to develop their service portfolios for R&I actors, for member states to use national support structures for RNI projects. But why develop a code of practice? Why did the European Commission put so much effort into this? Well, let's look at the most common and reported on piece of medical equipment, a hospital bed. In order to sell a hospital bed in the EU, they must meet certain legislation, and standards are a way to show the presumption of conformity, which Linda talked on earlier on. And standards are great knowledge transfer tools, as experts with more than 40 years experience within this industry are writing standards and placing their knowledge on how to meet the essential requirements of legislation into them. Standards also support the UN Sustainable Development Goals, which I'm sure we're all aware. So ISO TC 215, the committee has contributed with 241 standards to the following SDGs. ISO has published more than 22,000 international standards and related documents that represent globally recognized guidelines and frameworks based on international collaboration built around consensus. They provide a solid base on which innovation can thrive and are essential tools to help government, industry, and consumers contribute to achievement of every one of these SDGs. Furthermore, the European Commission has released its annual Union Work Programme for European Standardisation for 2023. The programme outlines the European standards and deliverables that the Commission intends to request, along with specific objectives and policies to be implemented in line with EU policies. As part of this new legislative framework, it aims to improve the internal markets for goods, strengthen the conditions for placing a wide range of products in the EU market, and the European SDOs, such as Sensenec and Etsy, are receiving standardisation requests to meet the essential requirements set out in new and emerging EU legislation. And here I've got one shown there on the medical device and in vitro device medical devices, and what they're looking for there. Next of all, I have some resources to help any researcher and innovator on the call here. So the following resources are available. We have Sensenec Guide 39. The main target audience of this guide are the researchers and providers of new technology who want to see the research outcome or new technology taken up by the market, as well as innovators, entrepreneurs, and startups who want their innovation to enter the market and are interested to know whether and how standardization can help them to meet their objective. There's also Guide 23. The Sensenec developed this guide to strengthen the competitiveness of European industry as well as European society as a whole through a strong relationship between research, innovation, and standardization. This document provides guidance on addressing research and innovation in European standardization activities and deliverables. The strategic objective emphasizes the market relevance of standards when research and innovation are combined with standardization, which is a really good combination. Next of all, it was touched on earlier, these SEN workshop agreements. A lot of projects are, Horizon Europe projects are working with standard development organizations and European SDOs to produce these workshop agreements. The one in question here, the motivation of the SEN workshop agreement, which is a pre-standard, came from multiple European research projects and large-scale pilots that found that they were all leading to identify the most suitable, lawful basis for collecting and processing personal health data for development, deployment, testing, and evaluation of digital health innovations. So this CWA aims to combine the experience of various RNI projects. Regarding this topic is a best practice guide on how to obtain user consent for personal health information. Next of all, what we're seeing more and more of is Horizon Europe projects becoming liaisons with ISO, where they have access to draft standards, contribute to development of standards, and recommend new work item proposals for new standardization activities. And this is coming out of liaisons with these Horizon Europe projects. For instance, standards are becoming an integral part of European projects as part of the Unicum project, which was discussed earlier. Projects to Work packages focuses on identification of medical products, related standards and terminologies. The first deliverable is concerned with gaps in existing standards and profiles and the rising need for adapted and new ones. Okay, the takeaways. The key takeaways from our presentation that I want to take home with you are that standards are part of your industry. You can see standards as they develop. You can be part of the standards as they develop, and national standards bodies are here to help you. And that's all for me. So thank you very much. It was a pleasure to present. And if you have any other questions, you can contact me through chat or follow up with an email later. Thank you.
Barry, thank you so much. So I suppose that brings us to the end of all of our presentations. So what we might do is use the last 8 minutes that we have to, to give you the last chance to raise some questions if you'd like. But maybe while I'm waiting for people to add some further questions, I might just draw your attention to a comment that Nicholas had made in the chat there, just emphasising that the HSbooster project is very interested in hearing from projects that are exploring, initiating or involved in workshop agreements, obviously because they're identified as an important channel for inputs to the project. So they're interested in gathering information on how projects find this and help to support them through their services. So just bring that to your attention and encourage people who might be engaged to reach out and get in contact with colleagues in the HSbooster if you haven't already done so. I might, I see Nick there. Nick, do you want to say something further about that while you have the floor?
Yeah, thank you very much, really. Yeah, so we're doing two things. Firstly, as I said, we're trying to support projects. So perhaps that could be advice or more information on the workshop agreements, more details on how you would initiate one, what you have to do, who you have to contact, and also potential associated costs. Our project is, we have, as I said at the beginning, we have a little bit of budget to support project in purchasing standards, or basically trying to reform membership for consortium members to join groups. And we're also exploring the workshop agreements. So I'm not saying that we can support the full amount that this may cost, but we're exploring how a booster service could support in some way, perhaps through application for further funding for this. In addition, in our academy, in our training academy, we're also collecting best practices and case studies where projects have actually done this and opened up a workshop agreement, and we're very interested in giving visibility to those projects and the impact that this type of activity has had for them. Thank you.
Not at all, thank you. And just encourage people who haven't engaged with HSbooster to date, please do reach out to Nick, and thanks for that. Okay, I might ask the speakers all to turn on their cameras if that's okay, and I might throw out one final question, I think, in the few minutes that we have to everybody, because I don't see any further questions open from the floor. So, but if you do, please let us know. So I was just going to say to people, obviously we all appreciate that the importance of health in all of our lives, and there's an inexhaustible need for research in the area of health. So I just want to throw it out to all the speakers, what would be your one key message for health researchers on this webinar regarding standards and how standards can support health research and ultimately the delivery of patient care? And I suppose really the question is, why should they get involved in standards? So I'll just throw it out to all of our speakers and see if there's anybody who's dying to jump in to answer that, but welcome anybody who wants to comment on that.
Really,
yeah. Robert, you go first. Thanks.
Thanks. One of the things that we put in our business plan is really awareness, and as a key focus area for us. And awareness works both ways. We need to be aware as a SEN TC251, but also as the SEN community of what's going on out there, and the other way around, people doing projects need to be aware of what standards are out there. So I'm really happy with the HSbooster project and how it's been developing, and that's really helping us to realize our objective of getting better awareness. Because one of the basic thing that we say is the key enemy of standards is ignorance. That's really what our experience over the past years has been.
Great, thank you so much.
I can add to that as well, if that's okay, Marita. I think early engagement is really important. One of the things I think is that you meet such interesting people at the standards bodies and the meetings. And I think for researchers who, it's a bit scary because it's such a dynamic and complex, in inverted commas, area. But there's only one way to learn, and that is to dive in and to start to follow a standard that you're really interested in. And if you're working on a research project, and it's early days, this is a great opportunity for you to meet like-minded people in the standards community and see what standards are being followed through over the life course of your project. And HS Booster and SEN are there to support. Thanks.
Thanks, Pamela. I see George has his hand up. George?
Yes, thank you, Marita. I totally agree with both the speakers that provided answers. The key item is raising the awareness, because it goes beyond just tasks and deliverables in the context of the European founded projects. All people involved, all the stakeholders involved in the modern healthcare domain should be aware about the existing standards, especially because this ranges in many aspects, from the healthcare pathway to the data modeling to the analysis of the data. So it is a broader impact, and that's the high added value of the HSS booster service. And thank you for this.
Great, thank you so much, George. Serkat, you're next. I think you're muted there.
Better now. Thank you. Yeah, well, thanks. A very good question. What I want to say is that what I have experienced quite a lot of time is that people say, why should we apply standards? It's costly. Well, it is costly, but it also costs for people who develop and work mainly for free. And so, but they should really understand why we need standards. So there's a reason why we want to have quality in everything, and there's a reason why you want to apply certain procedures. Well, obviously, it improves the economy, besides the interoperability of everything. If you want to have a care when you go to another country, well, you need to apply some sort of a standard to know that be confident it is reliable. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Silvana, you were the last one, getting in the last minute before we finish off.
Just in the last gasp. Yeah, no, I just wanted to say a little bit about my experience of being involved with the standard community. I think it is a really kind of symbiotic relationship that you have, because basically you have access to a pool of, you know, the kind of top experts in this area if you could engage yourself with standards, but also by inputting into the standards, you're ensuring that the standards are what Pam described as standards with teeth. You're ensuring that, you know, the stakeholders are actually represented in the development of the standard. And it means that the standard that comes out the other end is much stronger and much more easily adopted and implemented.
Great, thank you. And that really brings us to exactly the dot of 4 p.m. Well, sorry, 4 p.m. in Ireland, but 5 p.m. elsewhere. So look, it only leaves it now for me to conclude our webinar today. I know all the speakers today and colleagues from HS Booster Initiative are really grateful to those of you who participated in joining in the webinar, engaging with us with some great conversations I could see and the questions being answered. So that made it really interactive and engaging for us. So thank you so much to you as participants. I know the participants, you will want me to extend thanks to all the speakers. They did an amazing job in bringing standards in the healthcare sector to life for you. I also want to thank our colleagues in HS Booster programme that made this particular session possible, and particularly Gabriella, who was the powerhouse behind organising us all. There he is, organising us all and organising this event. So thank you to him for doing that. So I just want to say, you know, all of us, the reason we're on this webinar is because healthcare is important. You know, it's important to all of us in terms of our daily lives and our families. It's also an really vital industry in giving employment, fostering innovation, you know, and it's a leading sector in terms of research, development and innovation, and making a real difference in people's lives. Hopefully, the message coming through today has been that standards are a really powerful tool in the health sector, and there's vast international experience in the standards community that you can tap into and can be harnessed in terms of, you know, addressing some of the challenges in healthcare. And so the last message I suppose we want to leave you with is that the door to standards development is always open. There's immense opportunities to get involved in standardization, build and share expertise, and lead the way in terms of standards development in the health sector. Research and standards go hand in hand, and especially in healthcare, we can do that to achieve better outcomes for patients. So look, thank you so much. We're 2 minutes over time, but I think we had a really good session and very interactive from all the speakers and participants. So thank you so much, and hopefully we'll see you on a HS Booster webinar again soon. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Yeah.
Have a nice
Bye.
evening. Bye. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.